Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to the Celtic Way for an evening briefing / TCW React show. TCW React to Celtic's press conferences as Brendan Rodgers and Casper Schmeichel rave further about RB Leipzig victory, as well as preview the Kilmarnock game, which happens on Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock, a game that both Tony and I will be at. Looking forward to that. Tony, how are you doing this evening?
Very well. I'm always good when the work's done, Ryan. This is the last of our tasks, isn't it? And then we can enjoy the weekend until Sunday when we go back to work. So yeah, looking forward to Sunday, no end. But yeah, we never really switch off, do we? You sort of say tomorrow's a day off, but you'll be glued to your phone and you'll be all ears and anything that's happening surrounding the club. But yeah, that's kind of the plan, isn't it? When you switch off from tonight and you have a day off and you kind of try and do what you do. But no, Sunday can't come quick enough. That's what we're talking about this morning. The games can't come quick enough, and international breaks coming at a kind of another point. We don't want it to come for Celtic because they're just hitting a wee bit of form, but it is what it is. It's the last of the year, so there it is.
Yeah, in some ways I'm going to be like, after the 90 minutes have passed against Kilmarnock, then you'll be able to ask me if I want the international break to be here or not, depending on how Celtic finish that game against the Ayrshire team managed by Derek McInnes. Yeah, it's another international break. It's the third one. It's the last one until March, thankfully, and there'll be no winter break as well. So right the way through from November to about March, with a couple of weekends free, maybe. It'll be all Celtic, whether that's League Cup action, get the League Cup final, they've got Champions League games, they've also got the domestic games as well, as Celtic fight it out with Aberdeen and perhaps Rangers for the Scottish Premiership trophy. We'll be watching Aberdeen's result tomorrow very closely to see if they can continue to pile the pressure on Celtic and Rangers, who are sitting in first and third respectively. Aberdeen are they're joint top at the moment with a far inferior goal difference. That was another thing that happened today. Jimmy Tillene won Manager of the Month, despite Celtic conceding less goals, scoring more goals, and having the exact same record as Aberdeen. Has Jimmy Tillene get that award just because he's the Aberdeen manager and not because it's expected that a Celtic manager wins it? What do you think, Tony?
I don't know. I can't speak for the guys that voted, but I guess they kind of look at alternative candidates to guys like Brendan Rodgers and whoever, if there's a successful Rangers manager at the time, because they think it might be kind of easier for them to win it because of the resources they have at their disposal. So if there's a kind of alternative, sometimes they'll have a look at that. But I smiled wryly when I saw that the fact that Jimmy Tillene had won it, but fair play to him, but I think in this instance, I guess it's a toss-up between the two, isn't it? And Jimmy Tillene's got the nod, so fair enough. I don't tend to get wound up about it because I've sat on these kind of voting panels and I've outlined my own criteria for giving it to somebody over another, so I know how that works and I know how the kind of the judging may have went. So it is what it is. I think the managers in particular don't lay any great stock on it. For a while, they always felt it was a bit of a curse, didn't they? When they got it and then they would lose the match. So some of them were just like, and also whenever they do get it, they always say it's a team effort and they kind of dedicate it to everybody around them. So yeah, it's as I say, it's the awards at the end of the season or when cup finals roll along that you want to see Celtic lifting, and I don't think the manager will be too perturbed at losing out on October's Manager of the Month award. Would that be?
It was, yeah. That's probably the reason why he got it instead of taking the result in November into account. I know that was a League Cup result, but Celtic beat Aberdeen 6-0.
It's probably not part of the criteria that you were voting on.
It would have been. No, but I think the reason why he's won it is because
if they're voting
the Rangers result.
If they're voting the whole of October, then you have to say he's alongside Brendan Rodgers, they're the two outstanding candidates for it. So he won it this time. So we shall see if he wins any more, Ryan. That's moving on, No
sour grapes at all, none whatsoever. I just think that Brendan Rodgers is more deserving of that award, if I'm being perfectly honest. But that's just my own opinion. Shall we get into these
And if you were voting, you would have been able to make your case that way. So that's how it goes. In case you're wondering where my hands are, I've got one of my dogs is, I think there's been fireworks, and if you can see my Carpathian Shepherd, if I can tilt my screen.
Oh.
Yeah, he's there. That's Ben.
Who's that? Is that Ben?
Ben, boss named Ben, yeah. So he's been spooked a wee bit, so he just came in to join me, and he never comes upstairs and joins me. So there's obviously something wrong. But so in case you're wondering, when my hands are what I'm doing, I'm keeping them calm. But on you go.
Absolutely, that's totally fine. We'll get into these press conferences, but before I do, if you want to support us that little bit more, you can join our YouTube members channel. £2.99 a month. You'll receive early video access, priority comments, and exclusive members chat function. If you remember this week, you would have got the inside track on RB Leipzig early, as well as the Grand Old Team podcast, in which Tony and Kevin did, relating to Celtic's on-off relationship, you could say, with the SFA and the Scotland national team. Those were available on the YouTube. If you were a YouTube member, you got them about 12 or so hours early. So yeah, if you want to be involved and get those videos earlier, then pledge £2.99 a month, become a member, and join us. Let's get into the press conferences, and two good press conferences today. I think they totaled round about 34 minutes actually, because Brendan Rodgers was on for over 20 minutes. He was very detailed in his answers, and also Casper Schmeichel, who has perfectly grasped the language of English, as you would expect. He grew up in Manchester alongside his dad Peter, but he's a tremendous speaker and definitely a leader in that team, despite only joining in the summer. So let's talk about Casper Schmeichel's press conference. Thought it was pretty good, Tony. Was there anything that in particular that stood out to you about Casper Schmeichel's words?
You can tell the Rodgers influence on him, can't you? That we'll never get carried away, we'll always be humble. That's a man that's worked under Rodgers for years, because that's a kind of mantra of Rodgers, isn't it? That you never get ahead of yourself. And, I think one of the questions he was asked was, when Rio Hatate scored the third goal, were you thinking about how potent your save was? And he's like, no, not in the slightest. Sometimes they go in, sometimes they don't. You remain focused. And it's very much another one of the Brendan Rodgers' trusted lieutenants, which is why he was brought in to preach that message that Rodgers tells the players indoors in the dressing room, to take it out onto the field. And he's another one of the guys that you can trust. And he's had a phenomenal start to his Celtic career, Casper Schmeichel. And I was listening to him, and I heard the manager speaking while he was delivering his kind of press conference, and I like that, because it just says to me that they're all on the same page, and they all want the same things. They're all saying the same things, and inwardly behind closed doors, you can say what you like, Ryan, and set your own targets and set your own goals and keep that in-house. But outside, and the image that you project to the world is very much of a team unity and bonded and togetherness, and a man who is really delighted that he's pitched up here at 38 years young.
Yeah, he doesn't play like a 30-year-old goalkeeper, that is for sure. He can definitely get down to his feet. He can get down to saves very, very easily, considering his age. He's very agile, clearly taking care of himself throughout his career, and it's shown even in the latter stages of it. Hopefully he can maybe even retire at Celtic and get a couple of trophies in doing so.
Yes.
He's got that 1 year deal. I think he's got the option for one more. Hopefully he can stay for 2 or 3 and really sort of cement his status as a really good Celtic goalkeeper by having that longevity to go along with it. So he was asked about Cal McGregor, and Cal McGregor said that he felt the squad was playing as if they had a point to prove in the competition. He was then asked, do you feel that the point was proved after adopting a bit of criticism after Dortmund? Do you feel as if you've blown that out of the water with that resulting performance? He said, I don't know, to be honest. I don't really view it like that. With the greatest respect to you guys, which is the media and journalists, I don't read what you guys write, because it can be quite ruthless sometimes and it needs to sell For me, I looked at the Dortmund game. It was a one-off. I knew that it wasn't indicative of the team that we were or where we were. They hit their best day. We hit our worst day. When those two collide at the level of the Champions League, then that can happen. But we showed against Atalanta and we showed against Leipzig exactly the type of team that we are. We showed in pre-season when we played both Man City and Chelsea that we do have the ability, when we move the ball fast, to go and cause a lot of trouble for every team. We certainly did that against Leipzig. This is a guy that's experienced, Tony, and a guy that knows not to get too high and not to get too low. After games, he's talked about that midnight rule that he has, that you don't get too high, and after midnight, it's on to the next game. He's been thinking about Kilmarnock since Wednesday morning, which is, you know, I mean, we're still probably buzzing, but the Leipzig result, and it's Friday evening. He got over it on Wednesday morning. So I think that shows it's a measure of the man and a measure of the professional that Celtic have got between the sticks.
Consummate professional. And what an answer. And it's no slight on the journalist. It's lots of players, that's their coping mechanism. They don't read papers. They shy away from media, whether that be social media or whatever. Or they just, and some of them are actually not so much uncomfortable sitting down and fielding journalist questions, but some of them just don't like doing it. But I think he accepts that it's part of the shtick as a Celtic player, and he'll do it. And I think I respect that. I respect the answer that he gave to the journalist. He doesn't read papers. He doesn't immerse himself in that because it's how he deals with it. And he said some things can be ruthless. So if things are written down and some players think it's ruthless, then it can affect them. So he clearly blanks it all out so that nothing affects him. And that's his sole focus. His focus is on his game and his football. Because I think nobody will need to tell him if he has a bad game, like Dortmund. So, and he's clearly somebody who just, there was lots of flat flying around that night. He's paid no heed, no attention to it. And he's had two wonderful games back-to-back in the Champions League against Atalanta and RB Leipzig. So, fair play to him. And as I say, you can still respect our guys in our profession and what we do. And he's been very open and honest there with his answers, and he's still a good subject to interview. And, I'll say to you off air, Henrik Larsson was like that. Henrik Larsson never picked up a paper in his whole 7 years at Celtic Park. He very rarely did interviews. And it was just who he was. There you go, the proof's in that. That was a consummate professional, just got on with his job, didn't he? Preferred to do his talking on the football field, and he did that. So Casper Schmeichel's clearly the same. And you get players like that, and your admiration for them knows no bounds, because it's fine. When their turn comes and they come in, they speak, and they speak very highly, and they speak very well. And so I each to their own, Ryan. Everybody's different in the way they handle media, whether it be written or broadcast media. So it's their prerogative. I've always said these guys are adults. They can answer questions whatever way they see fit. They can choose to answer them whichever way they see fit. But yeah, I thought that was a really good answer from Casper Schmeichel. And he did give a detailed answer to most of the questions that were fired at him today. So, and you can tell that he is loving life at Celtic. He's embraced it.
Yeah, you can find that whole Q&A. It's available on the website just now. If you click on the homepage, it's free for everyone to read. So check that out if you want to read all of Casper Schmeichel's 11-minute press conference in full. If you want to check that out, it's on the website, as I said. Shall we move on to Brendan Rodgers, Tony? And he spoke about a multitude of, not issues, but topics.
Subjects, issues.
Yeah, the first one I want to touch on is talking about what he did with the players with regard to that goal that Celtic scored. And he was actually echoing a bit of what I was saying with regard to that goal. He said that was one of the best goals since he's been here. I'm, of course, talking about Leipzig, the second goal against Leipzig, in which Nicholas Kuhn has essentially a tap-in, but it's great work from Kyogo, Taylor, and Kuhn to get on the end of it. And Maeda with his pressing too. He said it's one of the best goals since I've been here, because everyone loves a nice part of the game, but when you can convince players to do the hard pressing and the hard running and make those last steps inside the press against top quality opposition who are renowned for that themselves, we've already gone through that and showed the players that. We showed it from our analytical angle, and we showed it from an angle, probably he's meaning there, the unique angle that's on the Celtic YouTube page, from the level behind the goal, where you hear the crowd and you hear how much joy that gives supporters, seeing their team press with that hunger and that desire. I always say, if you press well, you pass well. I think that's been the best game, a demonstration of that on Tuesday night. So yes, the second goal was a great goal. I was at the stadium, Tony, and the crowd erupted when that second goal went in because of the way that Celtic were playing, and you could hear the ripples happening when the press was getting initiated, and then again and again and again, and it grew and grew and grew. So by the time the goal went in, it was a massive crescendo of noise. Was that one of your favourite goals of this season as well, Tony, as well as mine?
I agree with the manager. It has to be one of your favourite goals, because see that goal, that's a template for domestic football and European football, and they pressed a quality team. How many times have you seen that happen to you, especially in the European arena, that kind of goal being conceded? And that's what I talk about, the progress, the learning and the development. Brendan Rodgers has drummed that into these players, and that was in 45 plus minutes. They never let up, and the team talk was so different, wasn't it? When you go in 2-1 ahead, the crowd were right up for it, and it became about game management and not blowing what you had and having the quality to add to what you had. And that was we spoke about it. I spoke about the quality of the Celtic players as well, but that's the goal that would please the manager most over these two spells at Celtic Park, because that's a team that's listening. That's players that are bought into what are buying what he's selling, and have to the nth degree, and they executed that game plan the other night, and no wonder he's purring about that and being chuffed about that, because that's when you know, as a manager, your message is hitting home, and that, as I say, that's a template for everything that comes after it. Now you have to say to your players, this is what you're capable of against a team of this stature. This is what I've been working towards. Still going to tweak it, still make it better if we can. And but if Celtic can do that to a team like RB Leipzig, my goodness, they can do it to anybody. And no wonder the stadium were up to drying, because it was a brilliant time to score. But the manner of that goal is everything that Brendan Rodgers has been working towards with this group of players, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that you've said there. It was a great moment and a great game and a great night for Celtic in the Champions League. There's not been many of them, but there certainly has been quite a few already this season so far. 3 out of the 4, Celtic have managed to get positive results. Hopefully they can do that the next time out against Club Brugge too. He spoke about the fact that Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty missed training. That was a story that emerged a couple of hours before the press conference, when the media were allowed to film training and witness training. Both Cameron Carter-Vickers and Austin Trusty, the American centre-back duo, missed training, but Rodgers said that they weren't training, but it was more precautionary, just giving them that extra little bit of time. We'd obviously 2 very tough physical days and 4 games. So we're just doing some light work inside, and we'll see how they are for tomorrow. So do a light training session tomorrow, and we'll see how they are. Tony, for me personally, and I know it's a bit of a spoiler for the predicted 11s, I'm not putting Carter-Vickers on that plastic pitch unless you absolutely need to. And with Liam Scales, you've got a luxury of having a really good defender waiting in the wings, waiting for an opportunity to get back in the team. For me, it's Scales, and you keep Cameron Carter-Vickers nice and fresh.
That tells me he's not playing, Ryan.
Yeah.
Tell people to read between the lines, and
I think Trusty will play.
Trusty will play, but I think Trusty was the precaution that he just doesn't want, because he knows that Cameron Carter-Vickers ain't playing. So I think he was just saying, right, you can just take it easy as well. We need you for Sunday. But that to me says that Cameron Carter-Vickers ain't going to be risked on that plastic surface, and quite rightly so. But it's something we spoke about this morning, and Scales and Trusty would be fine. No problem at all. I don't have any qualms about them playing on Sunday. So that's what I took from that as well, Ryan. Definitely.
Yeah. I actually quite fancy Austin Trusty to break his duck at the weekend. Funnily enough, against Kilmarnock, I seem to remember Maurice Jens scoring against Kilmarnock. Maybe not an overhead kick or a bicycle kick.
Overhead kick, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was. I think he'll get a header from a corner or something. I've just got a funny feeling. You can bookmark that or clip that or whatever you want to do, but I've just got a funny feeling. He's a big guy. He's a big lump of a player. So I want to see him get on the end of some crosses. Elsewhere in the press conference, I think it's worthwhile talking about the two fullbacks that Rodgers has got at his disposal at the moment. 2 out of 4. Yeah. He was speaking about Alistair Johnston. Now, I think you've got to caveat this because I think he's been a bit more cagier with the broadcast media than he was actually with Sky Sports, because he gave a different answer to Sky Sports. It seemed as if it was actually quite close between Celtic and Alistair Johnston about getting a new deal. He's saying that there's nothing that he can add about a new deal, 4 to 6 weeks. He's talking about negotiations. He's a player that they want to tie down. Whereas on Sky Sports, he said we'll hopefully get something done very soon with the player because he wants to stay at the club. So, I think Rodgers is just getting bored of saying the same things over and over. So he's just changing it up a bit, keeping everybody guessing. But it seems to be good news about Johnston.
That says to me one of the media outlets is a rights holder, Ryan, and the rest aren't. So, yeah, prioritise who you tell certain things. I could be wrong on that, but he's wise. He knows how to play the game, doesn't he? But yeah, I think the reports that are saying Alistair Johnston's going to sign a new bumper deal, they ain't wide of the mark, are they? He's not shot them down. And it's the kind of news that, not so much you want to leak out, but it's the kind of news that will come out anyway. So it's not a bad thing, is it? So I expect that to happen in the fullness of time. And I don't think he wants to give too much away because maybe it's at the early stages of negotiations or whatever. But I don't envisage any problems. Greg Taylor, he seemed to be more hopeful about, didn't he? He put a wee bit more flesh on the bones of Greg Taylor and said he was a player that he loved working with, and you can read out that stuff. And
it's quite
fulsome praise, wasn't it? So I don't think they're going to let this boy go out the door in any shape or form, right? I have to say.
No, he seems like a very, very popular member of the dressing room and a popular player for the manager to work with as well. He was talking about Alex Bailly. He did fantastically well, but Tuesday night was a different game. He can bring in Greg Taylor, and you can see the level that he's played at. He's someone that he sees a big part in what he's looking to continue here at Celtic, and he hopes over the coming months can do that. He was then asked about, it's a couple of months before Greg Taylor can go and speak to other clubs due to having 6 months left in his deal. And he says, well, hopefully, yes, we can get that done, because there does come to a point where both sides, we have to understand what we're thinking, because if it's not going to happen, then okay, we know that. We can then plan and prepare going forward. He says he loves working with Greg Taylor. He's played, about 186 games here. I can't tell you how influential he is off the pitch and how good he's been on the pitch for the club, the consistency in how they play. Both fullbacks are absolutely crucial for us and how we operate. We have two totally different functions and how they work. I'm glad that he mentioned that, because Greg Taylor inverts, whereas Alistair Johnston plays on the overlap alongside Nicholas Kuhn. The two of them play to their strengths, and I think that's really why it's working so well for those two players this season. Greg is a specialist in what he does for us, and you can see the flow of the team. Leipzig pressing us with 4 players. We're getting 5 in our build-up due to Greg Taylor. Get different solutions. He's such a good guy. He loves being here. He's got a big voice in the changing room. Every single day in training, he's so good. He's focused. He's just married. He's going to be a father later on in the year. So we want him to really settle down and get everything ready for him. Seems like a guy that Brendan Rodgers doesn't want to get rid of, Tony.
Yeah. It's like kind of the old Cat Stevens song, isn't it? Find a club, settle down. Yeah, all that kind of thing. If you want, you can marry. But there's lots of things happening in his life, so he's maybe saying to him, look, the grass may not be greener elsewhere. You've got a lot to think about. You're at a wonderful football club. Your impending fatherhood is coming. That'll be a big change in your life. You go elsewhere, it'll be major upheaval in your life. So maybe just trying to speak to him and give him some fatherly advice, as you would in this situation, and say to him, if you want to leave this football club, be 100% sure in your mind. And if there's all sorts of things coming into play as well. I think one of the commenters is saying that his partner might want to move down, so that might well be the case.
you might want to see if there's anything else out there, and if anybody else is interested in a different challenge. So you've got all sorts of advice, but I think Brendan Rodgers wouldn't. If you're getting advice from Brendan Rodgers, it's top notch. It's sound advice. Some of it might well be selfish too, but you can choose to take on board what you want. But I think Greg Taylor's got his head screwed on in that sense, and it wouldn't surprise me if he signed a new deal, Ryan. And I think it is getting to that, I wouldn't say worrying stage, but I'm sure that both parties want an amicable solution to it. And if you're Greg Taylor, I say to myself, it would be a big, big step into the unknown if you leave Celtic this time in your life, especially when you're about to, start your family life and all that and stuff. There's huge considerations. You're playing at a wonderful level. He came in the other night. It was pretty seamless, wasn't it? And he's winning lots of silverware and dominating Scottish football and playing at the Champions League level. That, for someone like Greg Taylor, I think that's more than enough to keep you content, personally. But it might not be, and I say the decision will be made between Greg Taylor, the club, his partner, and his agents, won't it? So, but I would be very, very surprised if he decided to turn his back on Celtic at this juncture in his career and go elsewhere. That's not to say it won't happen, but I'm quite positive after hearing Brendan Rodgers talk about him like that.
Yeah, and if I hope Greg Taylor sees those comments. I'm sure he will, and he'll be quite enamoured by them, because there'll be nothing better for him than hearing his boss speaking about him in such glowing terms, his manager. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, Tony, with regard to the press conference? Anything else that's sticking out, or have we covered all of the main points? He talked about Kilmarnock and the fact that Derek McInnes, it's always a difficult game against Derek McInnes' sides. There's also no excuse about playing on a plastic pitch because they won 5-0 to win the league last season. He also said that they're in a better place than what they were even then. He thinks that they're in an even greater place than when they won the league back in May time.
I think they are. So
they are.
I've got to say, and you just want them to sign off before the international break with another vital win, don't you? And chalk it off, as they say. But yeah, the games can't come quick enough, and I think the Celtic players are relishing the games now as well, and they'll be desperate for Sunday. And just the intriguing thing now is the lineup, isn't it?
There's also one more thing I'm going to bring up just before the end of this stream, and it wasn't mentioned on the full press conference, but it was mentioned on Sky Sports as well about Alex Bailly. Now, Brendan Rodgers says he hasn't heard anything about Barcelona bringing back the player after 6 months, which is really, really good news, I think, for Celtic, especially with the way that Bailly is developing at the club at the moment. I think it would be detrimental to his career if he was to go back to Barcelona and maybe not play any games whatsoever. He's better potentially being the first choice, if not playing half of the games at Celtic rather than playing none of the games at Barcelona. He seems happy where he is. He's enjoying his football. Thought it was brilliant when he came on against RB Leipzig, and he was brilliant starting against Aberdeen. So yeah, I'm delighted that that's sort of been, as far as Brendan Rodgers knows anyway, I'm glad it's been debuffed by the manager.
But somebody might have jumped the gun on that one, Ryan, and put it out, for whatever reason. I don't know, some people might put it out to unsettle the player or whatever, but they've maybe heard it from various sources back home in Spain. So, because it just seemed to come from nowhere, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. Just the one publication as well.
Before a vital game too. So you don't know if there was a wee bit of, I don't know, put it out there, see the lie of the land, see how it's, see the response to it. Other, as I say, maybe some mischief making or stirring the pot, as they say. But with all of these things, I always go with what the manager says. And if it's news to him, we'll take that at face value and say that it's news to him. And we shall see. But Vai's development into the player we all thought he was from La Masia Academy, and he's shown that further down the line he'll be real quality. And you just hope that Celtic can maybe do something and work on that, a deal that as well if the player is interested. So
Yeah.
he didn't want the loan insertion, didn't he? The loan to buy option inserted, but that was at the start. He might have changed his mind by the time it gets to, end of December, January time. He might think, you know what, my career's best interest might be served here. Again, going back to that, Celtic getting under players' skins, and you're just hoping that that's the case. And if they enjoy more nights like the other night, then you might think it's worth sticking around.
Yeah, certainly won't hold that not putting the loan to buy
No,
option in, because he
it's
wants
not.
to. He backs himself and he wants to play for Barcelona. That's the end goal for all of these players. You talk about the end goal for Celtic players
Yeah.
like Luke McCown, for Alex Bailly, a guy growing up probably in and around Barcelona and La Masia. Playing for Barcelona is the end game for him, and he'll want to hold on to that for as long as he can. Yeah, I think that's everything that we spoke about. Everything that was not worthy
Pertinent.
of speaking about, but yeah, anything that was pressing. We spoke about Greg Taylor. We spoke about Alistair Johnson, Kilmarnock. We will be back at let me think 1:45, around about 1:45, 10:02, to discuss all, not tonight, not on Sunday afternoon. I seen the panic look in your face there. I was like, no, I'm not going to get you up for a late night stream. Didn't even know what we would talk about if that was the case. Yeah, we're back at 1:45 on Sunday afternoon, where we will be discussing the team lines from Celtic versus Kilmarnock at Rugby Park, where Celtic will look to, well, we don't know what the table will look like by then, but we'll hope that Celtic can go maybe 12 points clear of Rangers at that point, even if for a couple of hours, see what happens in the Aberdeen game tomorrow. But the way that they're going, you would expect them to achieve victory more often than not at this moment in time. It's all they seem to be doing at the moment, apart from getting beat against Celtic and then drawn against Celtic, or vice versa. But the lineup of the games. Tony, thank you very much for joining me this evening. Thanks for all your help this afternoon, getting all the press conferences done and out. We were really sharp in getting them all done. Usually, sometimes these videos are a bit later, so it shows how quickly we've been getting them out and onto the sites, which is credit to us, I guess. We'll be back on Sunday afternoon to discuss everything to do with Kilmarnock versus Celtic. Until then, enjoy the start of your weekend, and we'll see you all on Sunday afternoon live from Ayrshire. Cheers, guys, and have a very good night.